we're going to do is, this is a class called The Anatomy of a Bracha, and you will definitely be saying brachas your whole life. I don't care if you're anti-Judaism, you're still going to be at some Passover Seder making a blessing over parsley or something. I don't know. You'll make a blessing over your matzah. We're always going to be saying Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam, which is 6 words. And so what we're going to do is get each of those words wired. So the first word that we're going to get down is the word Baruch. And the word Baruch has to do with the knees, and it has to do with water, water as like a source of water, like a brecha is a source of water, or let's call it a water source. Water source. That's the root from the word Baruch. Bet resh chaf can mean knees, berach, or it can mean brecha or water source, and obviously it means blessed as well. And what it tells us is that knees tell us about drawing down. It draws down your stature, drawing down. And it also represents humbling oneself. I mean, the fact that you're making a blessing at all is a humbling, because you're saying that you are not the source of this, but God is the source of this. So it's already humble for us to recognize. Any recognition, even in showing appreciation, is greatly humbling when you show appreciation to someone. So here it's drawing down and a humbling, and here, what do we mean by water source? Meaning source of sustenance. That we're recognizing God, source of sustenance. Is that how you spell sustenance? Is there an I in sustenance? In the end is?
Just an E instead of the AI. It's fine.
Oh, it's an E there? Really?
Just sustain and then sustenance.
Okay, great. Sustenance. And then blessed, I don't even know how to translate blessed. Like if someone blesses you and says you should be blessed, it's hard to understand how God would ever need that from us. So I don't understand that as much. But Art Scroll certainly used the word blessed. I just don't know how to translate why that would help.
He's the source of blessing.
Right, he's the source of blessing. That we have. He's the source of it all. But maybe what I'd like to write is perhaps, I'm going to write the word nachas, because that's the one thing you could give God nachas, that you made a blessing. You know, that he made you. When you do good things, it gives God nachas, because God created you. And the fact that you're choosing to use your created self well gives God nachas. Just like parents get nachas. What?
Ascribing goodness.
Ascribing goodness.
Yeah. Good.
You're good. Right, but again, that's like God needs us to tell him he's good. It's like complimenting a classical violinist. It's like a 5-year-old complimenting a classical violinist. You know? So.
But it's for the 5-year-old to show that he appreciates it, not for us to find it. The blessed could be on us.
It could be, but here we're saying Baruch Atah, blessed are you.
What's that saying?
You know what I'm saying? Anyway, but let's go on. Atah is a language of chutzpah, okay? Because we don't have a formal word for God, we're just calling him you. Unlike Spanish, where it's usted. You know, there's a special form for respect when you're speaking Spanish and other Romance languages, whereas in Hebrew, when we call God you, we just call him you without any special respect. Total second person. You know, it's not blessed is he, it's blessed are you. With the word atah, which is the same thing you'd call your friend. And how are we supposed to be so brazen as to call God atah? And the answer is that just like you are speaking to a contemporary, you use the word you, so too with God, you're a contemporary of God. Now you're probably wondering, how am I a contemporary of God? God's this infinite being and I'm this lowly, creation compared to God. How are we The soul is infinite. And now, very nice. Now you put that together with Baruch and Atah, you'll notice that when you use your knees and you say Baruch, Baruch, you see it creates a whole new level to your stature, meaning if that's my height, and then I say Baruch, so you see I have lost a lot of height there. And that is kind of, look, it spells the letter I, but this is the reducing of the I. And when you humble the body, when you humble your stature, what comes up? Soul. When the body's down, the soul's up. So when you humble your body, you humble the ego, the soul comes up, and your soul and God are contemporaries. You two are contemporaries. Your soul is. Your body has no business calling God you.
Well, the soul is also a creation.
The soul's a creation, but it's got so much infinite quality to it. It's not physical. You can't detect it. Doesn't show up in MRIs. Not born, doesn't die. Yeah, it can't ever be created or destroyed. It's just like God. Soul is very similar to God. Okay, it's not God. It's a creation. You're right, but it's so much more like God than your body's like God. And so in that way, they're contemporaries, okay? And contemporaries call themselves you. Like two judges, when they're playing tennis, they don't say, would your honor serve the ball? Yeah? They're old buddies, you know? Serve the ball. You know, would you serve the ball already? You know? And they call each other you because they're contemporaries, and so too, your soul is a contemporary with God. And that's the beauty of the bracha also, is you're going full soul mode when you're going to say a blessing. Because animals that don't have souls, you know, they have animal soul, but it's just animal nefesh. It's not like us with the yechida and the chaya and the neshama and the ruach and the nefesh. We also have a nefesh too, but animals only have a nefesh. And they can't do this. So this is what makes you really unique as a soul, is that you can stop, and before you bite, you can make that blessing. Or to stop and say the prayers of the morning prayers, meaning don't you just want to get right into your day? I took on a new thing this week. I'm keeping my phone in airplane mode. I sleep with my phone in airplane mode. And then I keep it in airplane mode till after I daven. So that I'm not re-interfacing with this world. So that way, I've really, once again, postponed the physical, first put the spiritual, finish davening, and go re-interface with all my responsibilities and everything I'm doing in the world, which, you know, and I'm, of all people, could easily keep it on, because, you know, I'm not exactly selling stocks. When I use my phone and all the interfacing I'm doing, it's always helping people out in the community of the Jewish people. So maybe I should have it on, but I'm keeping it off just to keep my head clear until I've prayed. And then mincha is the hardest prayer for man. Mincha is the hardest prayer. Why? Because it's right in the middle of your day. You know, it's like your ego is flying. You're making your money. You're doing your thing. You know, they're respecting you at work. You know, you're getting all the honor, and then you just gotta like go do mincha, and it's very humbling. It's a very humbling experience. Men do not love mincha very much. It's hard for men to do mincha. And Mari's already like the wrap up. You know, that's like, Mari's nice. You had worked a long day, and now you're kind of wrapping up your day with some prayer. But the point is, for all of us, is that we're postponing our own egos, our big I. We're lowering the I. This I was how tall I am before I say the word Baruch, because Baruch means knees. So it goes down to this level, and I've lowered my I. My soul comes up, and when the soul comes up, you can call God Atah. So Atah means you, and it's a language of chutzpah to call God you, but you and God are contemporaries, so to speak, when you are coming at life from a soul place. The next word we use for, one more thing, is Atah is the holiest name of God because it's God's essence. You're speaking to the essence. When you say Atah, you, you're speaking to the essence, right? If I said to Ronnie over here, would Ronnie like to go with me for a walk? You would be like, why are you doing that? You really would be more comfortable if I said, would you like to go for a walk? But then we'd have this question, well, who is he that I'm speaking to? Who is the you that's you? And you realize it's certainly not anything physical. It's not, I mean, everyone here would all point here to your heart, but you're not a pump. That's a pump. You point here, but you're not a neuron. Neurons either fire, don't fire. They look all crazy like this. You're not a microscopic neuron. So who are you? And the answer is you're this essence of this spiritual giant being, which is your essence. And that's the true you, and that's the true you with God. We spent a lot of time on that last time. We're not doing that today. The next is Hashem. Blessed are you, Hashem. And that's God's name that is spelled with a yud and a hey and a vav and a hey. And as we said yesterday, it's a bit of a pictorial that's describing how God creates the world. It starts with the idea, then the hey is the giving dimension to that idea. Then there's the vav, implements the idea, it takes the idea down to physicality. Oh, that this upper line represents the spiritual, and the lower represents the physical. So you got the first hey is just purely spiritual. It's just the idea of let me create the world, or I want to create the world. Then the hey gives that mention to that. Then the vav is just a yud that is implemented into physical. And then the final hey represents the physical creation in all its dimensions. In the actual 3D physical world comes from that final hey. Okay? I don't know why I decided to make it such a mess, but I'm like a little out of my mind today. Which happens, you all know, if those who come to my classes regularly, probably every third class, maybe. I'm totally out of my mind. So, next to know about the name Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey is, you know what, I think I'll do it like this. Let's go to the next name, and then we'll come back. The next name is called Elokeinu, or, I'll put a dash there. Heinu. How do you spell that? I've never spelled it in English before. Okay? For study purposes, we say Kenu. Even though it's Heinu, we're going to be saying Elokeinu. Okay? Why? Just because it's commanded not to use God's names in vain, and so it's one of the 10 Commandments. So we're extra careful. We're probably too careful. These days, we're too careful about everything. So we're careful about that as well. In the old days, can you imagine, if we lived in biblical times, you'd walk up to someone and they'd be like, how are you? They'd say it in Hebrew, Ma shlomcha. And you would say, Baruch Ado, and then your whole discussion would all be with shames of God. Like you'd be talking and using God's name everywhere, and all, depending what you're talking about, it'd be different aspects of Hashem's name. People actually spoke that way. And now we've got like different change-ups for all the names, because we have this kind of blanket statement that 3,326 years after Sinai, we don't know what we're doing anymore. And so, because we don't know what we're doing anymore, we're all eating crackers for Pesach. Only the Yemenites get that delicious lafa matzah, because they still know what they're doing. We don't know what we're doing. So we're all eating these like super dry crackered matzah, which is like cardboard, But it's only because you didn't know that? The matzah you grew up is because we don't know what we're doing. So we got to use that stuff. And we got to use names, different names for God and everything. It's okay. It's not a big deal. I'll eat that stuff. I eat those crackers.
I'm converting to Yemenism.
You're converting to Yemenite? Yeah, I've had a few Yemenites come to my table. Their floppy matzah.
Shafri starts at 7 a.m.
If you're Yemenite,
Yes.
7 a.m., huh? Okay. Anyway, so the name Elokeinu, we have to understand, the name Elokeinu is not really the name. The name's Elokim Shelanu. Elokim is the name. It's just that when you add the nu at the end, it means our God. Elokeinu means our God, but in the actual name of God that we're using is Elokim. Now, Elokim is a curious name because if you look at the name Elokim, first of all, it's got God's name. Aleph and Lamed is one of God's names. But it's got something really peculiar going on at the end. And what is that? A Yud and a Mem at the end of God's name. How can we have a plural name of God? The Yud and the Mem represents plural, right? Yeled means boy. Yeladim means children. Yeah, it's plural. Anyone else got an example of a Yud and Mem at the end of a name, end of a word? Short team. Anyone else got one? What? You can't use a double. A double is not going to work. Anyway, the word in plural, at least in the masculine, in the feminine it's ot. In the masculine, if the word's a masculine word, it gets im. And because God's a man, obviously, so God gets the masculine im. God's not a man, by the way. God is an infinite being that has no genitalia. The reason why God is referred to in the masculine is, does anyone know why God's referred to masculine?
Aren't there different aspects of God, and some are more masculine, and some are more feminine? So like the Shekhinah is like feminine. I don't know why it's like widely. I don't know why people think of God as like masculine, but it's both. Like God has names that describe both aspects.
Any other takers?
His role in creation is masculine.
So listen up. First of all, the word Shekhinah is not a name of God. This world's Shekhinah. So it's the physical. That's why it's in the feminine. The physical world is referred to in the feminine. And the reason God's referred in the masculine is because God's causing the creation to exist. And that flow is masculine. Causing of the flow of the light of creation is all in, that's the masculine. The masculine is the causer of flow and the feminine is the receiver of the flow. And so the creation is always referred to in the feminine, and the masculine is always referred, and God is always referred to because God's causing, this whole entire creation is coming via a flow of infinite light that flows and is squelched out, like filtered out, just like you see this light shining down. And if I put my hand, you see how I'm filtering out light? So it creates an image, doesn't it? So there's an image. So that's the masculine, it's causing. And then the feminine creates a receiver, which this board receives the light. And it's also the feminine is that I'm blocking light, which is causing it to become a vessel. It's causing border and limit to the light, which creates ultimately an image, which is all receiving, this board's receiving that image, which is the feminine. The whole physical world is called in the name of the feminine, even though the whole physical world has masculine and feminine. But we're all feminine, meaning even though you can have a masculine, plants are male and female. So even though you can have a male plant, it's really female, Kabbalistically. And you could have a male human being. But vis-a-vis God, I'm totally the female in the relationship with God. I have to be. And that's the whole test of men. And that's why men, Jewish men, have to do certain commandments that are, I don't know to word I didn't want to use the word emasculate, but they feminize the man. They bring him closer to the feminine receiving, and they cause man to be less of a assertive, like trying to assert himself. Just trying to mark every lamppost he walks by. It's to get man to stop doing that. For example, an example is we have to pray in a group. Women will pray their whole lives. They don't need a group. Whereas a man needs someone to say, where were you? We have to have someone say, where were you? And you can walk into a group minyan when you're a man, and they ask, you could be the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, and when you walk in the door, you know what they'll say to you? 7. Next guy, 8. And you're like, who are you calling a 7? The CEO of a company. In the Jewish group, in the prayer group, you're at number 7. And it doesn't matter who you are. Just shut up and grab a prayer book. Yeah? And we need that. We need to be in a group. Men very much need Shabbat more than anyone else. And the women representing the 7. 7's always feminine. Men's represented by the Vav, the 6, which is a Vav, which is a vector, just like a spear. It's like that symbol that we won't mention. But it's also just kind of shooting into space. And whereas the feminine's a 7, the 7's all cycles in nature. Everything in the natural world is in 7s. The more feminine a man is, the more connected he will be to God. The more masculine a man is, the more disconnected he'll feel. But if that masculine man knows that and works on himself and is involved in doing the male commandments, so then he will be able to have also a powerful relationship with God. Maybe not as powerful as a man who's born already very feminine, but he can at least have a nice relationship with God. I was born quite balanced. I'm very kind of androgynous, strong masculine aspects and strong feminine aspects. I meet a lot of men who are like these jock-type masculine men, and they have a hard time. It's hard for them to connect. But the men who are born totally effeminate, meaning they would be interior designers, they are in the most amazing relationship with God. And so I tracked them in my shul. I tried to figure out who were the most feminine men in my synagogue. The ones who were just absolutely total feminine. And I found them, and I realized the men that I identified as the most feminine in the whole shul are the men who lead the prayers on high holidays or any other emergency. So they're like saved for like the most important prayers where like we can't have someone up there who's just going to say the words. We need someone who's going to take the whole community where they need to be. Like they got to really lead us to where we got to get to.
Is a rabbi a feminine or a masculine job? Because usually the rabbis are leading.
A leader rabbi is both. Leader rabbi is both, but a prayer leader, the best prayer leader will be the most feminine man in the shul. Yeah. All of this is obviously a disaster with feminism because if you take a man who's got his feminine side developed well in the Jewish world and the browbeaten 60 years we've just had of apologizing for being men, which has seeped into the Jewish world, so then there's not much left of a man after all that. Yeah, not much left of a man. And so it's a killer. Somehow feminism and Judaism, meaning the whole black hat world, was to filter out Western movements from the Torah world. The black hat world was created to make sure that stuff doesn't seep in that's not purely Torah. But because it so perfectly works with Judaism to have men humbling their masculine side as Jews, it just seeped right in. And of course, the American Jewish women who are observant are like loving the power because Jewish women are powerful.
So that's why we don't need like mitzvot to
certain mitzvot.
No, but there are mitzvot that bring us more in touch with our like masculine side.
No, you don't need it.
We don't need it.
No, unnecessary.
So only the men.
Men need to feminize. Women are perfect the way they are.
I
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
But the crazy thing is women are powerful to begin with. Now you got a movement in America, a powerful, huge movement that empowers women. So Jewish women are already super powerful ladies. Now you got a movement empowering them, and men are now getting double stuffed down by the Jewish stuff that makes us more feminine, that humbles us, and double stuffed because we're living amongst a whole movement where we have to apologize for being men. So it's a disaster for Jewish marriages. Not that they won't stay married. Jews who are traditional stay married. But it's a disaster for Jewish marriage because her respect for him, just goes, it plummets in their 30s and culminates around 40, in the early 40s, where the respect for him just goes like wow, like straight down. It's cool in the 20s because you're jet setting around, you're having a good time. You're like chavrusas. In the 20s, it's fun. Yeah, but when you get in your mid-30s later, it's just the respect goes down. And when respect goes down, attraction disappears. Attraction is a direct function of respect. When a woman respects her man, she's attracted. When she's not, it's over. It's over. So this is a whole other issue that they're dealing with in just the secular world. Just regular Western society is now suffering the aftershock of men not being men and how it's been impacting their intimacy. Unfortunately, intimacy has taken a major hit, and the latest studies say it's a little worse now. The studies are about 6 years old now, but those studies said that the rate of cohabitation for Western people after 10 years of marriage is once in 6 weeks, which comes out about 8 times a year, which is hardly sounds anything like normal. So this is the whole impact is if there's no attraction, that's the way it goes. No respect, no attraction, it's over. So for that reason, women's job, I'm just bringing this up because a lot of people probably see this video, is that the job of a woman is not to dump him. Oh, that's a whole other phenomenon. Throughout history, women, are very loyal people, and husbands throughout Western history, not so much in the Jewish world, but they trade up. When they turn around 50, they trade in their wife for like a 30-year-old. Yeah, and people still do this out there. But that trading up has really slowed down amongst men, and all of a sudden showed up amongst women. For the first time in like known history, women are trading in their husbands. And it's a wild phenomenon, but that's what's going on. If you understand everything I just shared with you for the last 5 minutes, all of a sudden the trade-in's coming from the women. They're trading in their men. The men are so hurt. They're so hurt, and so betrayed, and so, it's a total role reversal has happened. And it's just wild. So anyway, the reason why I'm sharing all this, and I'm going to finish now because we're really discussing the anatomy of a bracha. The reason I'm sharing all this is because we each have jobs. The woman's job is to build up her husband. Women naturally pick up the slack of their homes and their husbands and their families. Don't take on extra stuff. Let him pay the bills. Let him figure out how to pay a bill. Build the guy up, and let him really be the king. You don't go to the Rabbi. If you have a rabbi, send him to the rabbi. Let him come home and say what the Rabbi said. You're discussing what schools to send. Obviously, you need to put your 2 cents in, but let him at least sense that he went and discussed your discussion with your rabbi, and the rabbi said, yeah, I think you got to send to that school, and let him come home and say, we're sending to this school. Give him a mandate. Okay, that's one. Build your a mandate. Give him a date to be a man. Yeah. Give him a mandate. Yeah. That's number one. Give your husband a mandate. And for the rest of us men, our job is to be very clear and recognize for ourselves, what are the impacts? What have the impacts been on us? And I don't know what you got to do. I mean, go buy a 6-pack of beer and buy a mug and put it in your freezer or something like. I don't know what you got to learn to take apart a Mustang, and put it back together and learn how to hike and navigate with a compass. You gotta be more the Marlboro Man a little bit, okay, and develop that thing. And I'll tell you, most importantly, women have a lot to say. And they feel a lot of conviction. If they're Jewish, they're usually right, okay? Because they got a lot to say and they're very smart and they're saying what they're saying. If you disagree, do not tell them that. Do not tell them that. Just shut up. Let her finish. Let her just say what she's saying. And that's the mistake most men make. Suddenly they turn in this little boy, this little hurt boy who's going to show her she's wrong about whatever it is she's saying. She may be wrong. She may be right. Shut up. It doesn't matter. You're not a hurt little boy. Let your wife speak and get off her chest whatever she had to get off her chest, whatever points she wanted to make. Let her finish her points. Tell her she made good points. go think about those points of whether they're really where the family needs to go or whatever, and then go to your rabbi and let him lead or something, but don't fight. When she shares her points, just be quiet. Okay? And every man blows it, but every man needs to hear it over and over again. Be quiet. Okay? And it goes for you guys, your sons of women as well. When your mom's making all of her points, just let her finish. Let her finish, say, okay, I'll think it over. Put the phone down and ignore everything she said. Okay? But don't fight. Don't fight. Okay? All right, enough about that. So Elohim is in the plural. Why is in the plural? So watch what we're going to do now. This is going to be fun. I think I'm going to I need more board. So I think I'm going to use this area here. I'm going to draw a circle here. And this circle represents the finite world. Everything. So in this circle would be, let's say this dot is our galaxy. And in that dot is our solar system, and in that dot is our Earth. Okay? This is the entire expanding universe. This is the finite world. The world that's limited by space and time. Clear? That's what this is. Now, what's outside of that? What's outside of that world is the infinite, that which is unbound by space and time. Infinite means completely unbound by space and time. What is wrong with this picture? I'm going to give the definitions again, give everyone a chance to think. Okay? The circle represents the finite world, everything bound by space and time. It's expanding. Okay? Everything outside that circle would be the infinite that's surrounding space and time, and it's infinite. It's unlimited by space and time. Okay, raise your hand if you think you know what's wrong with the picture. I'm not going to necessarily call on you. I'd just like to know if the class needs more time to think. What's wrong with the picture? Just raise your hand if you think you know what's wrong with the picture. Okay, give everyone a little more time. Raise your hand if you come up with it, if you figured it out.
You're talking about the technicalities of the picture?
Yeah, it's technically totally incorrect.
Right.
There's something really wrong with this picture. Okay, Yaakov, what's your name?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Yaakov, what's wrong with this picture?
Could it be that you can't add or subtract a number to an infinite? So if I can count how many lines you drew, then it's not actually infinite.
I'll give you a shortcut in life. There's two very different definitions of infinite. There's a mathematical infinite, meaning 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, till infinite. Meaning it'll never end. That's mathematical infinite. And then there's infinite when discussing really only God, but physicists would also discuss these things, and that means unlimited by space and time. It's a separate definition. Okay? Because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 has limit. It keeps going infinitely, whereas the infinite is unlimited by space and time. Clear? So one's a mathematical definition, the other is a ontological definition. Yeah?
Shouldn't there be infinite within the circle too?
Excellent, excellent. Remember what we said. What's outside the circle is unlimited by space and time, and what have I done? I limited it. I pushed God out of the circle. So what do I have to do? I have to bring God into the circle. Moshe, can you hit the lights while I do this? Take your protein pill and put your helmet on. Off, slowly off. As the world disappears. Can you imagine if it just kept going until it was pitch black, even though the windows were open? Okay, so then you are in the realm of the infinite. And the infinite is unlimited by space and time. It's everywhere. And that's what it looks like. This is what's called hardcore monotheism. Okay, you can turn the light back on just because we're filming. The softcore monotheists, who are the other religions in the world who believe in one God, so they would be that original picture before I drew it in. They believe there's one God out there. Whereas we believe God is one. Nowhere in the Torah does it say there's one God. What it says in the Torah is that God is one. Vehu echad. He is one. Ve'ein sheni. There is no other than that one. Ein od milvado. There is nothing but God and that oneness. So this is really the picture of hardcore monotheism, true monotheism. And that's why, now you'll notice all of our commandments are relating to this. Every commandment is somehow connected to this oneness. Like, for example, the Shema. When you cover your eyes and say Shema, it's going back to the oneness. I'm not looking at anything. I don't see distinction. I see only the oneness. Because this world is called the world of lies. And when I'm saying Shema, I mean the truth. Yeah? I mean the truth, meaning I'm in that undifferentiated oneness. We also grab the four-cornered garment representing the four directions, the physical distinction of the world, the four directions. I gather all four directions into my left hand, say Shema. Shema. Shin has the highest frequency. It's representing fire. Shin, which expands, representing the expanding universe. Shema, that mem has the least frequency, and it represents water, which is the ultimate solvent. Whatever you put in water, if you come back a year or two later, it's gone. Even a metal screw will become the water eventually. Everything becomes water when you put it in. It contracts and becomes the water. So that's the mem, which represents this whole pulling in and recognizing everything's really Hashem's inside of everything. That's the water, and that's the mikvah, and it's a bunch of other things that we're not going to discuss. Anyway, but the whole... Oh, so we're discussing the names of God. So let me bring the circle back. So now we got the circle back, and you have different names of God. One name of God is the Yud and the He and the Vav and the He, which represents Haya, Hoveh, and Yihiyeh. Was, is, and will be. I.e., outside of space and time. Haya, Hove, Yihiyeh. That's the name of God representing the transcendent, like beyond space and time. Okay? And but the name of God that fills creation, which is made of multiplicity, right? The creation's made of multiple stuff. You know, there's a lot going on in physicality. That's why the plural name of God is the name Elohim. Oops. Elohim. So you have the name of God representing beyond space and time, the transcendent or the eminent, and then you have the name Elohim, which is how God fills space and time, the immanent. Clear? So these two names, when you're saying a blessing, so you're saying, so far you're on Baruch, which is this humbling thing I'm doing, Baruch, like bringing myself down, yeah? Baruch. And then Atah is God's essence, like I can never know it. It's unknowable. It's unknowable, yet somehow I'm a contemporary because my soul's also unknowable, and the two of us are connected. And then Hashem, Yud and He and Vav and He, which we pronounce differently as Adne, and Ado, and then Noi, and that's God, transcendent, beyond space and time. Elokeinu, which is Elohim Shalanu, or it's just, the name Elohim is what you have in mind. Elohim is filling space and time, okay? So you have surrounding space and time and filling space and time. Are you guys starting to realize how spiritual a blessing is? It's insanely spiritual. Yet we're all like, we're all making blessings like it's the only thing in the way of our food. It's like, got to get this blessing out of the way. we're crazy. We're crazy. We're doing like probably one of the most spiritual things you'll ever do as a Jew is a blessing. But when's the last time you actually experienced it that way? Right? So people who are here in my Anatomy of a Blessing class, they become much more spiritual Jews.
What about the amen?
Huh?
The saying amen.
You're jumping ahead a little bit here. We're only on Elokeinu at this point. So,
How is pantheism different than Judaism then?
excellent question. So pantheism would be that everything's God, yeah? But they wouldn't include God. They would leave God out of
There's no
everything.
external God, just
Yeah, it's just,
visible.
yeah, everything's God. This is all God. Yeah, whereas in Judaism, everything's God, but because, I mean, God only had God to make the world. There was nothing but God, so everything's God. But that God that's making the world is infinitely beyond the world. Why? Because the world's finite and God's infinite, so God's infinitely bigger than any world God makes. Just like you're almost infinitely bigger than the thought of a flower. Think about a flower right now. Are you a flower? No. You're a person thinking of a flower. That flower makes up a very tiny amount of who you are right now, and now it's already gone. If you stop thinking about it, it's gone. And so too, we are in God's mind, but God's an infinite being. And God's also infinitely beyond mind. So the mind of God is unfathomably infinite, and the actual God that's beyond mind, beyond Chachma, Bin, and Das, is almost indescribable. I mean, there are only very few Kabbalists even venture into discussing God beyond mind. It's enough for us to discuss God as Chachma, Bin, and Das, as the intelligence that's somehow coagulating into physicality. This is all made of God's intelligence. But the intelligence that it's coming from is infinitely beyond the intelligence it is. Just like you're so far beyond that flower that your intelligence is imagining. Only this is an infinite being in a finite creation. Now, last two words of the blessing. It's important to get the word melech. There's a lot of words for ruler, how to, being a ruler. There's madrich, there's manhig, there's sholet, there's all kinds of words for this. But this is a melech, and a melech is probably not what you normally would think of as a king, who's like this all-powerful guy who's going to wipe everybody out who doesn't agree with him. That's not what a melech is. A melech that's called a dictator. Okay, a melech is a king of the people. Melech is the king of the people. Now, he may be part of a dynasty of kings, but he's really the king of the people. The king recognizes that he is a representative of the people. The king has two Torahs, one that he keeps at home, then he has a little one he writes. He has to write them both. One he has to keep with him at all times. He is under the Torah. He's even under the prophet. If the prophet tells him, you're not going to battle over this, he doesn't go to battle over it. The prophet says, you got to go to battle over this. He's going to battle over this. The king he's a leader, but he's a leader of the people. And so anyway, the meditation that we're not doing is imagine a king invites you to his kingdom, but it's not going to hold you there. He's just inviting you to be a guest for the rest of your life. You can be a guest, wear the royal clothes, join the royal family on all their trips. You eat with the royal family. You are getting your own chamber with your own chambermaids, and you're going to have your own life with the king. But total free will. Like, you can leave if you want. You can go out and do your own thing, or you can stay with the king. That's the kind of king that God is. That's the kind of king. Meaning God, he's not coercing any of us. Every one of you chose to come to Jerusalem. Everyone who chose to be in this class. You can choose to do a mitzvah. You can choose not to do a mitzvah. And when you say Melech HaOlam, you're basically coronating God. Because you don't have to. Most people in the world will have drunk the water or eaten the fruit without any blessing, without any mention of the king. So you're saying, God, I choose to live with you. I'm choosing to hang out with you and the royal family. I live in the palace of the king. Melech HaOlam. I'm calling you Melech. Once you call God Melech, you are giving him great honor and you're making a statement that you choose to be with the royal family. You're part of the royal family, and you're not coerced. You can say a blessing, you cannot say a blessing. It's up to you. Ha'olam means the word hidden. It means the word hidden. Ha'olam, it also means the word world, but think about it. What is our world if not that where God hides himself? Here he's not hidden, here he's hidden. Ha'olam, God's really hidden. So the word olam is the same word for hidden. Even in modern Hebrew, the word olam means hidden, ne'elam means missing. Nelmuli amaftechot, my keys are missing. I can't find my keys. Is the same word for hidden. My keys have hidden themselves. So the word olam means hidden. Melech haolam, why is it called melech haolam? Because the melech, the king, is hiding. And I'll just give you a quick analogy for that. What I mean by a hidden king is, imagine you're at a king, like a real king's royal party before the king comes out to greet the subjects. Now the king always wanted to know what it was like to be at a party. So the king actually got a makeup artist and a costume person to dress him up like a pauper of like just a subject of the kingdom. And he's now like walking around his own party. Comes over to the bar and some guy's really drunk, drinking down the king's wine, and he's making fun of the king, and guess what? Everyone's laughing. They think it's the funniest thing ever, and he's like, the king, what an idiot. Leaves us all his wine, and the king, what a buffoon, and everyone's like, ah. Yeah. Anyway, then the king's like totally freaked out. He goes over to the hors d'oeuvres, and the food, and he sees people are like putting the silver in their pockets. They're stealing from the king. They're like putting extra food in their jackets. There goes a little goblet, and they're stealing from the king. The king's like ready to strangle the guy, but then he would give up he'd have to give up his identity. Anyway, one of his aides comes up to him and says, like, you got to get backstage because it's time to greet your subjects. So the king goes, gets all the makeup off, and gets back in his royal garments. And everyone rise for the coming of the king. And the king comes out, and everyone bows down. And this one guy, the drunk guy from the bar, stands up and says, "Long live the king!" And all the other drunkards and other people with goblets in their pockets are like, "Long live the king!" He's the hidden king. Imagine what it's like being king of this world. Imagine what it's like being king of the universe. The hidden king. So let's all recognize the king's with us all the time. He's giving us the ability to be with him, and he's also, when we forget he's there, he's there. And let's honor the king, the hidden king, Melech HaOlam, the king who's hidden in all things. Now, after all we've just shared, your blessings should probably be about a minute long, just to drink a sip of water. It should be about a minute. So it's okay for the next week, you can do really long blessings until you start like getting it down to like a zip drive form. But try not to just inhale your blessings anymore. Make them real pit stops for spirituality. Shalom, everyone.